Lanka's progress and recovery, what essential ingredients do we have? And that's what we will talk about tonight at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. To talk about the essential ingredients Sri Lanka must have to go towards to achieve our 2048 goals of a developed nation, I've invited to our studios Sri Lankan Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation. He is a pioneer in the innovative cardiovascular devices and procedures, and he is the pioneer in an entrepreneur in the United States, a Sri Lankan born. Dr. Bandula Wijay, thank you very much for joining us. A very warm welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I said pioneer in innovative cardiovascular devices. You innovated the netted loop vascular stent, which is used today in cardiovascular procedures, medical procedures world over. And you're Sri Lankan. We're truly proud about that.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about your journey, Dr. Wijay. Today, at a time when Sri Lanka is looking at progressing to the next level, but this is also with the kind of difficulties, with an unprecedented economic crisis that we have gone through, and we are trying to come out of with the support of development partners, international agencies. But what do we need here in Sri Lanka? What must the people of Sri Lanka, what must our attitude be, and what kind of policies do you think we must have besides asking help from the international community and trying to amass development aid from these agencies?
That's a very good question, very interesting, and it's something I have given a lot of thought, not only as the Ambassador for Science, Technology, Innovation, but also as a Sri Lankan. Sri Lankan, we are very concerned about the country, and this thought goes through my mind all the time. What can we do, or what should we do in order to make this happen? And I call it path to progress. Actually, I write that word as path, the number 2, progress. And actually, I'm invited to give talks in different universities in Sri Lanka now. And this is the topic that I'll be talking about to the young students. So this is really close to my heart. So thank you for asking me that question. The answer to that question has many facets. It's a complicated thing, but it's not just one thing we have to do in order for we to change ourselves from a developing nation to a developed nation. So it has so many things. And in my various meetings with you in the past, I have always emphasized on education. So when we talk about education, typically what comes to your mind, anybody's mind in Sri Lanka, is the book education. Basically getting knowledge, get past O-level and advanced level, somehow get into a university and get some sort of a degree and then get a job. Typical concept is to get a government job, and sometimes you get a job in a private industry. So that's what goes through most people's mind when it comes to education. After living in the United States for nearly 50 years, my mind has completely changed on what education means. To me, education means your ability to use your analytical skills and your ability to think about how to do something better for humanity and use that to make things better for yourself, your family, and if you do that, then it becomes a progress for the country. Imagine that a single individual person is doing very well, got a good education. I don't mean the education that normally goes through your mind, but I mean the education that is wholesome. And then when you are 25, 30 years old, you are involved in progressing the things that humanity needs. And when you do that, that's good for you. But as you're doing that, it's also good for humanity. It's good for the country that you're living in. It's good for the whole world, like myself, in working and developing cardiovascular devices. I help just about everybody around the world, right? So sometimes you can do that, sometimes you don't have to do that. You can do whatever that is relevant to your own ecosystem. So when it comes to that, I think number one thing that Sri Lanka should consider is education. What type of education? So that we can talk more about it if that you answer the question. And there are a few other things that are important too.
What type of education? That's something I would really like to discuss about. But before that, I'd like to talk about your journey, Dr. Wijay. I'm sure that will inspire our viewers, the larger Sri Lankan population that wants to be entrepreneurs, that want to invent, innovate and support the development process of our country. Yes, we need the backing of education, but the mindset, but the thought process that went through you to help you innovate devices that are today used across across countries, in various laboratories, in hospitals across the world.
Yeah. So one of the most important thing is you must take responsibility for yourself. I think that's one of the most important things that one must say, I am going to take the responsibility for myself. Do not depend on the government, for example. Okay, so I think in Sri Lanka the general public depends too much on the government. That mindset has to change. Let's not depend on the government too much. The government has to do their job, and the government job is to create good policies that helps us, the people, to come up with and develop ourselves, and in the process develop the country. Because if you think about it, what I'm trying to say is, think of developing yourself, and then the country will develop automatically. But please don't understand when I say develop yourself, that doesn't mean getting through the university and getting some sort of a degree and getting a job, a government job which could be fairly high paying. That's not developing yourself. Developing yourself is that you have developed a skill set that you can use to innovate things, or even if you don't innovate things, to do something good for the society, for humanity. And in the process, you help the people and help yourself in the process. And that way you uplift the standard of living in your ecosystem.
You stress on humanity, helping humanity, contributing to the world, to give back to the world and help people. Going back 18 years ago when you left Sri Lanka, of course initially to India if I'm not mistaken, and then you went to the United States on a scholarship. But next year you'll complete 50 years in the United States. It's been a long journey there, but you were educated in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, it's a long journey, but as I'm so involved in it, I don't feel the time. It is not like my flight from Houston to London. That was a long flight that I felt is long. But my path, or my road that I took, I didn't feel it. I'm from Gaul. I went to Mahinda College up until advanced level, and life was normal. The student just do the normal things students do. But as a student, I was quite innovative. I innovated a few things that I got some certificates. I think it's for the Institute of Advancement of Science.
What were your innovations back then as a schoolboy?
I got a prize for this thing that I came up with called the reaction time. That means, let's say you're driving a car and your light changes from green to red. Okay, how long does it take your mind to process that and apply the brakes? So I developed some sort of a setup, and so I created a system where it will change, and the people who came for that event, they had a seat where they could sit, and I go through this trial, and I gave how many seconds each person took to react to it. And interestingly, they are very different for different people. And so I got I think the first place in that competition.
Just to also add a question there, did you feel at the time, or looking back, do you feel that there was a system in Sri Lanka that really helped encourage innovations of children, of school students as yourself, who would innovate, come up with new ideas, new devices to commercialize them in Sri Lanka?
I don't think it existed then when I was a student. I'm not sure whether it existed now either. But this is something you need. This is one of the most important things in about education we talk about is education has to be wholesome. It cannot be just learning subjects of history and mathematics and chemistry and physics. No, this is not wholesome education. You have to have a wholesome education. And it cannot be rote learning either. That means you read whatever and you memorize it, and then there's an examination and you answer those questions through memory. And there are tuition masters or tuition companies that prepare students how to answer those questions. And then in the end, the students who can adapt to that system score better than maybe some student who is really smart and cannot adapt to that system and wouldn't do well in the exams, and they're left behind. So what we really need is a system where the selection of the students should be based on their ability to in analytical thinking. So that is very, very key. And I mean, I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I think people who are experts in this should take a look at it and adapt a system like that. So wholesome education involves analytical thinking, creative thinking, skills of thinking and solving problems. I remember when I went to university in India on a scholarship, very well prestigious, big name school. Every class that I went to, this was in the 60s, 67, 66 I think, I went to the, at the end of every class, the professor gives you a homework sheet, and it usually had about 30 to 40, sometimes 50 questions. So the first 10, 15 were fairly simple, and the second page or third page, they were challenging questions where it really needs a lot of thinking, analytical thinking, how to solve the problem. So I was introduced to that system in India in that time, although that system is American system.
In the late 60s.
Yeah, but India, several universities like IITs adopted this system early on. And that kind of got me started in learning this system in analytical thinking. So when I went to the United States, so I'm used to this system. So I was acclimated to the system. It was easier for me to adapt to the new system of the United States as a student. So it's the education in the U.S. is very interesting at the time. I mean,
you studied your undergrad in India, and then
that was on a scholarship.
And then your master's
U.S. On a Fulbright scholarship.
Okay.
And I was in the University of Southern California. It's sort of an elite school, and I'm in India also. I went to elite school, and I got my various degrees over there, and actually I'm one of the people who completed fairly quickly, and then by accident I fell into the field of medical devices or medicine.
Your research initially was for fuel that's used in rockets. How did this transition happen from trying to develop rocket fuel, if I may say, to medical devices? This
is a story I tell whenever somebody asks me to give a speech. So my PhD is about this material. It's called filled system. Filled because about 95% of this material is solids. In the case of rocket fuels, it's the one that burns in order to give that flame that is coming out at the bottom. Right. But it is held together with a binder, which is polyurethane. At least in the 74 when I was a student. That I think it must have changed now, but at the time. But the failure of this system was a big question at the time. And again, sometimes you get lucky And as I was doing this research and doing in my laboratory in the university, every time I tested the material, and there was a pop sound, pop, and when we opened it up, there were holes in there, and immediately what came to my mind was cavitation. And so I took these samples to my professor and said, I showed him to it, and my professor said, "Oh my God, that's cavitation." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's right, that's cavitation." And I think that's the first time in history that somebody observed cavitation in these field systems. So that led to finishing my PhD. But during this time, I attended a conference. I was having my, during lunch break, I was having my lunch, and there were 4 or 5 other guys in the same table who I didn't know. And they were from 2 different divisions of the big corporation, American Hospital Supply Corporation. And this group was telling about a problem they had in their work to the other group. And so they have been trying this for years, like 3 years. After the lunch, I went and talked to the guy who had the problem, saying, "Hey, I think the solution could be fairly simple. I mean, if you do this, if you do that, if you do this, this will be easy solution." So a week later, I got a call from him and said his boss wants to talk to me. So I went there to meet the boss. His name was Bob, and he said about the problem and said that, "Hey, you said that you know how to solve the problem." I said, "Yes." And I explained to him what I would have done. And the next thing I know, within about 15-20 minutes of that, he offered me a job. And
this was during
I was still a student, and I'm on a visa that can be converted into an immigrant visa. So he didn't know that. I didn't know that. He gave me a job. I came to my professor and said, "Professor, I've got a job. What do I do?" He said, "Oh, you're almost done. I'll let you go." So I started in the medical field from that opportunity.
So
and I haven't left it since then. I'm still working on it.
You didn't come back to Sri Lanka at the time, or?
I was required to come back, and really I don't want to talk about that on television. But yes, the United States State Department gave me special permission to stay.
It's amazing that a Sri Lankan with such promise was recognized there in the United States. I think there have been many, but you are a pioneer in the innovative cardiovascular devices and procedures, and you're recognized across the globe for this. I'd like to go back to your history again. 1984. That's when you started your entrepreneurial career there in the United States.
Yeah.
In the United States. This was along with Dr. Paolo Angelini.
Yes.
And the Texas Heart Institute, together with the institute, you developed the angioplasty balloon catheter system along with coronary artery perfusion pump system to be used during angioplasty. I don't know what this is, but I know what an angioplasty is. And then in 1995, Dr. Wijay, you invented the nested loop vascular stent used in treating stenotic arteries after balloon angioplasty. Now this is after certain medical devices, stents, had problems, and you identified those issues, solved it, invented and produced it for the world. Tell us this journey, your collaboration with Dr. Paolo Angelini.
Yes. So I think I may have to explain what all these terms mean a little bit. Yes, please. So angioplasty is using a balloon, and I have an example here, the camera. This is the catheter that was developed. Is use a balloon so this one it's not open, but this one has a balloon. It's a catheter, long catheter, 135 centimeters long. At the end there's a balloon, and so this is those days it was threaded through the artery in the groin called the femoral artery, and it goes up the aorta, and then you can thread it into wherever the problem is in the coronary artery, wherever the blockage is, and you inflate the balloon that push the plaque. That is called the plaque. This build-up of calcium and cholesterol and all that's called plaque. So you push it up and open it up to re-establish the blood flow. In a couple of sentences, that is what angioplasty is, okay? But what happened those days is about 30% of the time it closed again. So patient who had balloon angioplasty, they had to go back and get it done again. So the procedure that we developed using a perfusion pump allowed to inflate this balloon very slowly and keep it up for a long time while we pump blood beyond the lesion. The word lesion means that's where the problem is. And distally, the away from that lesion, using that pump, we were able to pump blood in. So the heart is getting oxygenated blood, so the patient does not feel pain. The electrocardiologically patient is stable, okay? And so we were able to keep it up for 20 minutes. Otherwise, you can only inflate it for like a minute or less because the patient feels pain. Now with this, 20 minutes, we have done more than 20 minutes sometimes. The results from that was very encouraging. Most of the patients who got this treatment, they did not reclose as fast or as often as the one without. So we had a very good success. While that is going on, there was two doctors, Dr. Palmer, Dr. Shantz. One was in Texas, one was in California. Mm-hmm. Together they invented the stent. When they invented the stent, that stent was very short. 8 millimeters is the length of the stent. So that's maybe about that size. And it was very stiff, and it was not long enough. Because it was short because the coronary arteries are very tortuous. They are like this, and they could not push this to the distal, to the far side of the coronary arteries because it would not go through. And so this stent had few problems. Especially, all this happened, although we are the ones developing this, we were testing this in Europe. That was the way we did things those days. Things have changed now. So we take it, got something out quickly, take it to Europe, because the regulations in Europe were a little more laxed at the time, not anymore. So we tried them in Europe. And what happened, we realized that this didn't work. And then when we saw that, and I had a company making these catheters, so I came out with the idea, okay, I have a solution for this. So the one that I invented is a longer one, 25, 30 millimeters long, as against 8 millimeters. So you can, and it was flexible, so it can go through this tortuosity. And so we solved the problem of tortuosity, solved the problems of shortness, that 8 millimeters to 25, 30 millimeters long, so long lesions can be handled. And that innovation is called the nested loop catheter. So that was how the stent was developed.
That's what's used now, nested loop.
From that, this company, I sold this company to the Boston Scientific, and so they continue to do it, and they have done some modifications. Remember, this is in 2002, and because from 95 to 2002 is my development process. It takes a long time to develop these things. And 2002, within a week after the patent got issued, I got calls from every major medical company in the United States. Because Boston Scientific has bought my other company before, I felt comfortable with them, and so I sold to them.
I think it's time we take a short break, but there is much to discuss with Dr. Bandula Wijay, Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation in Sri Lanka. When we come back, we'll talk about education, ethics and innovation. Welcome back. You're joining us at Hyde Park, and we are in conversation with Dr. Wijay, a pioneer in the world in innovative cardiovascular devices and procedures. Dr. Wijay, you spoke about your journey, briefly though, very inspiring. But going forward, it seems you're completing 50 years in the United States, and you haven't stopped working. You haven't stopped innovating. It's great to hear that, and you're trying to see how you can solve problems. But this solutions-oriented mindset, this is that just within you, or did the whole system that helped bring up your education or helped you through education allow you to have this kind of thinking pattern?
I think you asked a question, and I'm going to give an answer that probably helped the Sri Lankan youngsters. I think one of the most important things to develop yourself and the country is the environment that you live and work, the environment, the family. And I always tell young people that when the bird lays eggs and then the little bird hatches from the eggs, how does it learn how to feed himself or fly? Is by watching the parents, right? I think we need to have this we have to have children, the kids should be able to look up to other people who have done things and then follow through. What I'm trying to tell you is that you can create, or you must create, this environment where the children in schools here, you have to bring them with other adults who have done it. And then they will learn from these adults saying, oh, so-and-so did it, I can do it. Not only in science and technology, business. Say, for example, you have very well-known business people here, but if one of these people can visit a school and talk about him, tell him the story how he did it, it will register in these kids' children's mind, how did he do it, I can do it. So that sort of thing is, to me, I think that's a really good way to go of indoctrinating the children and the development. So I know I didn't answer your question.
This also means there is an opportunity for Sri Lanka where your innovation, your entrepreneurial skills can help Sri Lanka maybe attract investments. Are there any plans?
Yeah, that is very true. I think Sri Lanka should very seriously consider of technological innovations because in order to compete in the world market, it's all right. I'm not against producing garments and things like that. You have to do that to bring in foreign exchange. But if you sell a garment, you may make, I don't know, $10. But if you sell a new innovation, maybe you can sell it for $1,000. So you get more money for what you develop and produce, right? So our education system should now be geared so the students coming out of the universities will come up with ideas that do not exist in the world today. Is it doable? I think it's doable, 100% doable, because I'm a Sri Lankan. I'm living in the United States, I'm doing it, so if I'm living in Sri Lanka, probably I'll do the same. So it is doable. And I think the education system should be focused on this critical thinking and developing the skills in order to come up with solutions to problems.
Talking about the IT and tech industry itself, in the line of investments, attracting investments, what kind of a stable policy environment can we create in Sri Lanka to attract these investments? And how can you support Sri Lanka achieve these targets of becoming an investment destination?
I think this is a very, very important question you asked me. One of the problems that we have faced in the past, and probably it's not solved yet, is somebody who is coming from outside to invest in Sri Lanka. The process is very, very complex, very complicated. And the rigmarole that you have to go through in order to get the various approval processes, it's really discouraging the people who come to invest here. And in the past, I know 2, 3 or more companies who have wanted to come here, want to invest, want to produce and develop things here, and as they saw the whole process, they backed out and they didn't do it. And so what I propose to various governments that have been in place is you have to come up with simple policies, some simple paperwork that you just fill in the blanks and go through the system, but develop a process. That means the investor can go through the process quickly, within a week, and get the approval to establish a factory here.
Any possibility that the companies that you work with, are working with, may come to Sri Lanka?
Yes, so there are a couple of projects that people are interested in, especially, actually I have to tell you, companies interested in balloon angioplasty and stents to be made in Sri Lanka. So I'm supporting it because I'm bringing the knowledge and the know-how. And I'm also tying them up with Chinese partners. There are Chinese companies who are willing to come here and work with, and actually next week the Chinese companies will be coming here. So in order to bring the know-how, bring the technology, bring the investment to do some things like this. But the government has to make these policies fairly simple, clean, easy to do. And once you do that, I think that this process will accelerate rapidly.
How much of an investment are we looking at if these companies come into Sri Lanka? How is it going to really change Sri Lanka's landscape for innovative products if these companies come into the country?
So the investment could be anywhere, substantial. So that will come from local as well as overseas.
As a joint
and also
venture.
investment of skills coming from overseas, because if somebody brings skills, I remember that a few years ago, you know what personalized medicine, I think we talked about it in
our previous conversation. Yes.
Personalized medicine. Somebody from the United States came to, a very important Sri Lankan scientist came she wanted to bring her know-how, knowledge, and so there's a value to her knowledge and know-how, so that sort of thing. But that's not the difficult part. The difficult part is how can we go through the system, the administrative, complicated system, in order to make this happen. I think that the government should look at very seriously and make it a simple process.
I have a few questions also listed out. We don't have much time, so I'm going to very quickly ask you about data protection and how this, what your view is on the legal side of things, because this is one of the biggest concerns in Sri Lanka.
I have heard of this. I'm not an expert in the area. I've heard of this. One of the things I can tell you is when I connect my computer to the system, okay, there is some degree of protection. I'm using some software to protect myself from outside, okay. But the problem is that is not easy to do. For example, I can't mention the hackers from different nations can hack into the defense system in the United States. So it's to protect yourself from that hacking is a very difficult task, okay? So the question is, how important is it? It is important. Then as a user, I use various techniques to protect myself. For example, in our company, we have two computer systems. One computer system that is not connected to the internet, and the other computer system that is connected to the internet. So nobody can connect to my computers because there's no connection. That connection is taken off or we put a tape over it actually in our company, but bigger companies, they have systems to protect like that. So this is a concern for sure, no question about it, it's a concern. And that's something that you have to figure out at national level how to do it. But for the progress of the country, I have to bring back, these are not the things you should focus on. You should focus on wholesome education.
Wholesome education.
Creating engineers who can come out and practical enough to build a chair, build a table, build the computer, build something. That hands-on engineer is what we need. The hands-on doctor is what we need. So
So
I think the focus,
you
people
spoke about education. You said people to add to it. If you can add about what type of education. Now you said analytical skills, creative. Where can we start changing this education system? We spend minimal from our budgetary allocation for research and development in Sri Lanka. Along with that, if you can address this bigger question of education policy.
I think one of the things in our culture is, including my parents were both school teachers. My father was a principal, my mother was a principal. For them, education was important. And I have heard during my younger days, you have to become a doctor or engineer, right? I think this sort of thinking direction has to change. And the way to change that is to show that people who didn't become doctors and engineers are also doing very well. And that's sort of bringing it up, and people like you can do that. You can say, pick up some person who is not a doctor, who is not an engineer, but he's doing very well. He's making a lot of contribution to society, a lot of contribution to humanity. So you can bring that up. And the other thing that I would recommend and suggest, and I have had this discussion with many government officials, ministerial level or presidential level, is that, you know, we divide the students into this arts and science and commerce. I think that's a terrible idea. So we have to allow these students to continue learning economics, social sciences, political sciences, languages, even though they are going to do a science degree, even though they are going to do an engineering degree, even though they are going to do a medicine degree. They have to continue with that. So when a chemist is developing a new process, new product, he can relate to what he learned in social sciences, in economics and other things, saying, is my work that I'm doing, is that helpful for the society? Is that going to solve a problem in the society relatively quickly? Or is it something that helps the society 20 or 30 years from now? I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, things that will help you 20 or 30 years from now. But in the situation that we are in, we really have to solve problems that we need to solve right away. Okay, and that comes from educating the children, kids, students, and give them the ability to think these aspects of economic, social sciences, and things like that. I remember my kids were born in the United States. They went to school in America, and when my son was in university doing chemistry, he learned social sciences, political sciences, economics, languages, and all sorts of things. Although in the end he is a doctor, but this helps even in his current profession. Knowing about the society helps how to handle the patients, how to treat the patient. Is what he's doing is economically viable? So that sort of the background really helps, and that's exactly what we need in this country.
We have a significant brain drain, especially in the STEM fields. How can we look at creating an environment? You spoke about an innovation culture in Sri Lanka, a change in attitude to reverse this brain drain, to retain some of our best and brightest brains in the country, those who are creative, or to bring back the kind of contribution that those who are overseas, like yourself, to help develop this country.
So I remember during the pandemic time, we talked on the Zoom meeting.
Yes, we had a virtual discussion. Yes,
and you asked me this question, and then you asked me to write an article about it, which I did. And look, one of the very most important things that we have to do, and I have told this to all the important people in this country, is you have, I think, 10 universities in the country, I don't know exact number, and these universities produce engineers, doctors, lawyers, and various professions, okay? You need to have one exam that everybody has to take in order to practice their profession. This is what we have in the United States. There are 2,000 plus universities in the United States, and I can't tell you exactly how many medical schools. It doesn't matter which medical school you graduate from, Harvard Medical School, which is very prestigious, or some fairly unknown medical school. every student from the United States or those doctors who come from other countries like India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, or South America, or China, Japan, everybody has to sit for one exam. And that's how you become a doctor. That's how you standardize it. It doesn't matter where you went to school. MIT is a very well-known engineering school, and then or Rice University in Houston or University of Texas in Texas. They are great, well-known engineering schools. Or you graduate from some unknown engineering school. Everybody has to sit for the same exam to become an engineer. Okay, that's only fair. I think we have to implement this system. By doing so, we will attract a lot of students to be here, take this exam, and become an engineer or doctor or somebody, and they can live, work, and live here. Okay, and that way, even though you will have some people leaving, you will have enough people in here to keep the required percentage of doctors per population.
Are you also addressing here the question, the controversial concern about certain activists about private education, private universities entering Sri Lanka for education? Especially there has been controversy surrounding medical education in Sri Lanka. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a very political one, okay? This is very political. But to me, one of the things that is happening right now, there are so many private universities here. And end of the day, these students who go through these private universities, they get some sort of a degree, they will come out, and let's say they start producing, they start solving problems, okay? Then people will look at it and say, oh my God, yes, this works, this is working. Now, United States has lots of private universities, like even Harvard, Yale, all these Price, they're all private. USC, where I went to, is also a private university, right? It doesn't bother anybody who is going to the state university. Nobody is concerned about somebody going to a private university or somebody going to a state university. Now, when you talk about private universities in the United States, don't think every university is like Harvard or Yale or Stanford or USC. There are a lot of private universities who are in a different level. And students go there, they come out, and they do great things. And they become entrepreneurs. And they solve problems of society. And people really don't care in the end of the day, where did you get this degree from? Did you do something? Did you help humanity? Did you help the society? Did you help the country? Have I produced something to export so you can bring in some dollars to the country that you can then use to buy your medicine or something else you need that we don't make here, right? End of the day, we have to produce and export. Where people go to school really doesn't matter, okay? So long as that they have come up with a skill set and knowledge and ambition to produce something, not only product, service as well, like in IT, and then be able to export to the... But the fortunate thing is that our country is blessed with brain. I mean, if you talk to people here, I can understand how smart these people are. They're brilliant people here, okay? But like I have told many times in the past, you can take a rock in Ratnapura district, unless you cut and polish it properly, it won't be brilliant, you know. So, and if I do that, I'm not a gem person. I don't know how to cut and polish it. I'll produce a lousy gem. But if you know how to cut and polish the gem, then that will be brilliant and that will fetch a good price. That's what you have to do in the education system. How do we cut and polish this brain so that it is going to be brilliant? That's what we have to do.
I think your message is clear. Education, ethics will empower.
Absolutely.
My Sri Lanka, your Sri Lanka,
yes.
our Sri Lanka, to relate your learnings to the practicality of today's world, to really implement our development aspirations in a practical manner, and to relate learnings, education in a way that benefits humanity and society. Thank you very much, Dr. Bandula Wijay, for sharing your inspiring thoughts here at Hyde Park.
thank you, Indy. That the most important thing is whatever we just discussed is totally doable. That's the most important. It's doable. It can be done.
You've done it. You've shown it to the world, and you haven't stopped doing what you have been doing. And we're truly proud to say you're Sri Lankan, and you've taken the Sri Lankan brand globally. Dr. Bandula Wijay, Sri Lankan Ambassador for Science, Technology and Innovation, is an American inventor, businessman and diplomat of Sri Lankan origin, and Dr. Bandula Wijay is one of the pioneers in the world for innovating cardiovascular devices and procedures. In fact, the first to innovate nested loop vascular stents to the world. Thank you very much for joining us here at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24. We're very proud that we were able to share the journey of Dr. Bandula Wijay here on AdaDerana 24. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
Thank you.